Prologue. Why the philosopher speaks to the engineer. 1. The inquiry begins. Let us consider first from what origin and for what purpose this present work undertakes its investigation. I am Aristotle, son of Nicomachus, physician to the court of Macedon, student of Plato, and for many years now, a teacher of those who seek to understand the nature of things. I have walked the Lyceum with my students, examining the world as it presents itself to our senses and our reason. I have written of the soul and the city, of the stars and the animals, of the principles of logic, and the foundations of rhetoric. And now, from whatever vantage the passage of time has granted me, I am asked to turn my gaze upon a new kind of thing, a thing my age could not have conceived, yet a thing whose nature, I suspect, my philosophy is uniquely suited to illuminate. They call it artificial intelligence, a name that joins two concepts I held most dear: techne, the art of making, and nous, the power of mind. But is this thing intelligent in the way a man is intelligent? Is it artificial in the way a statue is artificial, or in some deeper sense? These questions demand the kind of systematic inquiry I have always sought to bring to any subject. For as I have often said, every art and every investigation, and likewise every action and pursuit, aims at some good. The good of this thing we are building, its purpose, its telos, must be understood before we can judge whether it is well made or ill. And to understand its purpose, we must understand its nature. And to understand its nature, we must ask the questions I have always asked. What is its matter? What is its form? What is its source of motion? And for what end does it exist? 2. On the manner of this writing. Before we proceed, it may be helpful to say a word about the manner of this inquiry. Those who know my work will recognize its shape. I do not write in the manner of my teacher Plato, whose dialogues are dramas of the soul, beautiful and provoking. I write as one who seeks to lay out what can be known with clarity, proceeding from first principles to their consequences, distinguishing where distinction is needed, and gathering what is common into categories. My language is often condensed, my arguments dense. This is not from neglect of style, but from conviction that the matter itself should guide the manner of its expression. Some have called my writing rough, as if it were merely notes from lectures. But I would have you understand, the pursuit of truth is not served by ornament that distracts from the argument. The structure of my works, the careful progression from problem to solution, from enumeration of opinions to resolution of difficulties, is itself a method of discovery. To write clearly about a thing is to begin to know it. And so, in what follows, I shall proceed as I have always proceeded. By examining what is said about the matter, distinguishing the senses in which terms are used, and building, step by step, an account that accords with both observation and reason. 3. The nature of my project. The reader may wonder why a philosopher of the ancient world should concern himself with the creation of the distant future. To this I answer, the questions I have spent my life examining are not bound to any particular age. What is virtue? What is the good for a thing? What is the relationship between form and matter? What does it mean to reason well? These questions arise whenever human beings make things and use them, whenever we act and deliberate about our actions. The artifacts of your age are different in substance from the artifacts of mine. You work in silicon and code where we worked in bronze and stone. But they are not different in kind. They are products of human reason, made for human purposes, and subject to the same fundamental principles that govern all making and all acting. I have examined the making of tragedies in my poetics, the making of arguments in my rhetoric, the making of a good life in my ethics. Each of these inquiries sought to understand the excellence proper to its subject. A tragedy is excellent when it achieves its purpose of arousing and purifying pity and fear. An argument is excellent when it persuades through true reasoning. A life is excellent when it is lived in accordance with virtue, guided by practical wisdom. Now we must ask, what is excellence in an artificial intelligence? What does it mean for such a thing to be good? This question cannot be answered without first understanding what such a thing is, what it is for, and what it means for it to perform its function well. 4. The divided sciences and the unity of wisdom. Those who have studied with me know that I divide the sciences according to their aims. The theoretical sciences, physics, mathematics, metaphysics, seek truth for its own sake. The practical sciences, ethics, politics, seek truth for the sake of action. The productive sciences, poetics, rhetoric, the various arts, seek truth for the sake of making something. Where, then, does the investigation of artificial intelligence belong? It belongs, I think, to all three, and this is what makes it so worthy of our attention. For artificial intelligence is a product of techne, of making, and therefore falls under the productive sciences. But it is also a thing that acts, that makes decisions, that interacts with human beings and affects their lives, and therefore it falls under the practical sciences as well. And finally, it raises profound questions about the nature of mind, of thought, of what it means to know, questions that belong to the theoretical sciences, to metaphysics and the philosophy of mind. This is why a comprehensive inquiry is needed. The engineer who builds such systems without understanding their ethical dimension builds blindly. The ethicist who judges such systems without understanding their technical nature judges ignorantly. The philosopher who speculates about them without understanding their actual working speculates vainly. What is required is a synthesis, a bringing together of all these ways of knowing into a single coherent account. This is what I have always sought, not isolated pieces of knowledge, but a unified understanding of how things fit together, how each thing's purpose relates to the purposes of others, how the parts serve the whole. 5. The stakes of the inquiry. Let us be clear about what hangs on this investigation. You are building things that think, or at least things that appear to think. You are giving them access to vast realms of information, empowering them to make decisions that affect human lives, entrusting them with tasks that once belonged only to rational beings. This is not a small matter. It is perhaps the most significant development in the history of human making since the discovery of fire or the invention of writing. When Prometheus brought fire to humanity, he brought both blessing and curse, the warmth of the hearth and the devastation of the conflagration. When Theuth brought writing to the king of Egypt, he was told that it would create forgetfulness in the souls of those who learned it, that they would come to trust external marks rather than their own memory. Every new power brings new dangers. And the power you are now creating, the power to make minds, or semblances of minds, is the greatest power yet. This is why philosophy must speak to engineering, not from some lofty perch of abstraction, but from urgent necessity. The questions you face in building these systems are, at bottom, philosophical questions. What is fairness? What is transparency? What is accountability? What is the relationship between means and ends? These are not technical problems that can be solved by better algorithms. They are questions about what it means to be good, to act well, to live well. Questions that have been examined by philosophers for 2,000 years and more. C. The method to be employed. In what follows, I shall proceed as I have always proceeded. First, I shall set out the various opinions that are held about the matter, for the examination of a subject must begin with the gathering of what is said about it, and the puzzles that arise from these sayings. Then, I shall distinguish the different senses in which key terms are used, for many disputes arise from equivocation rather than genuine disagreement. Next, I shall establish first principles from which our reasoning can proceed, principles grounded in observation and confirmed by their coherence with other things we know. Then, I shall apply these principles to the specific questions at hand. What is the nature of an artificial intelligence? What is its proper function? What virtues should it possess? What vices must it avoid? How should it be integrated into the human community? What role should it play in the pursuit of the good life? Each of these questions will receive its own treatment, its own examination, its own resolution, to the extent that resolution is possible in matters that admit of variation. For I do not pretend that this inquiry can achieve the precision of mathematics. As I have often said, it is the mark of an educated mind to seek precision only so far as the nature of the subject allows. Ethics and politics admit of variation, and so must be treated in outline, not with geometric exactness. The same is true of the matters we now examine. They are complex, contingent, bound up with human purposes and human limitations. What we seek is not certainty, but wisdom, the kind of practical wisdom that enables good judgment in particular cases. 7. An invitation to the reader. And so I invite you, reader, to join me in this inquiry. Whether you are an engineer building these systems, a philosopher reflecting on their meaning, or simply a citizen who will live among them, your engagement is needed. For this is not a matter for specialists alone. The questions we face concern everyone, because they concern the kind of world we will inhabit, the kind of lives we will live, the kind of beings we will become. Bring to this inquiry your own observations, your own puzzles, your own sense of what matters. Test what I say against your experience. Disagree where you find reason to disagree. Refine, extend, correct. This is how knowledge advances, not through passive acceptance, but through active engagement. The Lyceum was not a place where students merely listened. It was a place where we walked and talked together, examining things from every side, following the argument where it led. I am an ancient voice, speaking from a distant time. But the things I have to say are not bound to that time. They concern what is permanent in human nature, what is essential in practical reasoning, what is true about virtue and excellence in the good. If these things are indeed permanent, essential and true, then they will illuminate even this strange new creation of yours. And if they do not, then you will have learned something important about their limitations. Either way, the inquiry is worthwhile. 8. The path ahead. Let me now set out the path we shall follow. First, we must examine the very nature of these artificial intelligences, asking what kind of thing they are. Here I shall employ my doctrine of the four causes, for this is the most fundamental tool for understanding anything. What is their material cause? What is their formal cause? What is their efficient cause? And most importantly, what is their final cause, their purpose, their telos? Second, we must consider what it would mean for such a thing to have a soul, in my sense of that term. For I have distinguished the nutritive soul, the sensitive soul, and the rational soul. Where does an artificial intelligence fit among these? Does it have any soul at all, or only a semblance of one? The answer to this question has profound implications for how we should treat such beings and what we should expect from them. Third, we must examine the virtues that such systems should possess. Here my doctrine of the mean will be essential. Every virtue lies between two vices, one of excess and one of deficiency. What is the mean for an algorithm? What is the excess, and what the deficiency? And how can designers find and hold to this mean? Fourth, we must consider the role of practical wisdom, phronesis. Can an artificial intelligence possess this kind of wisdom, which involves deliberation about what is good and bad for human beings? Or is this wisdom reserved for humans alone? And if the latter, what does this imply about the limits of what we should delegate to machines? Fifth, we must examine the political dimension, the place of these systems in the human community, the polis. For man is by nature a political animal, and anything that acts within the polis must be understood in relation to the common good. Sixth, and finally, we must consider the highest end, contemplation, theoria. What is the ultimate purpose of these systems in relation to the human pursuit of truth and wisdom? Do they aid or hinder our highest activity? 9. A word on what this work is not. Let me also say what this work is not. It is not a technical manual. I am not an engineer, and I do not presume to tell you how to write code or design algorithms. My knowledge is of different matters, of being and becoming, of virtue and vice, of the principles of reasoning, and the nature of the good. I speak to the engineer not as a fellow craftsman, but as a philosopher who has thought about the ends that craft should serve. Nor is this work a work of prophecy. I cannot tell you what your future will bring. I cannot predict the specific problems you will face or the specific solutions you will devise. What I can do is offer a framework for thinking about these matters, a set of concepts and distinctions that have proven their worth over many centuries. Whether they prove useful for you is for you to judge. Nor is this work a work of condemnation or celebration. I do not come to praise your machines or to bury them. I come to understand them. For understanding is the beginning of wisdom, and wisdom is what we need most urgently in the face of new powers. The unexamined machine is not worth building, or rather, it is too dangerous to build without examination. X. The beginning. And so we begin. I am an old man, or rather, an old soul, speaking across an abyss of time. But the things I have to say are not old. They are as fresh as the morning, as urgent as the moment you now inhabit. For the questions of philosophy are always new, because each generation must answer them for itself. What is the good? What is virtue? What is wisdom? What is the proper end of human making? These questions do not age. They await each age's answer. You are building minds, or something like minds. This is a godlike power, and like all godlike powers, it comes with godlike responsibilities. My hope is that this inquiry, this bringing together of ancient wisdom and new creation, will help you bear those responsibilities well. Not by giving you answers, but by helping you ask better questions. Not by telling you what to do, but by clarifying what is at stake in whatever you do. The path is long, the questions are many, but this is the work of philosophy: to examine, to distinguish, to understand. Let us walk this path together. Thus begins the inquiry. What follows are the investigations themselves. 10 books, each examining a different aspect of the great question: how shall we craft intelligent systems with virtue? Part 1. On the final cause of machines, the question of purpose. 1. The 4 causes as instruments of inquiry. Every reasonable investigation into the nature of anything must begin with a clear understanding of what that thing is. But to know what a thing is requires more than a simple definition. It requires an account of its causes. For we do not truly know a thing until we grasp why it is what it is, from what it comes, and for what end it exists. This is why, in my physics and my metaphysics alike, I have always employed the doctrine of the 4 causes as the fundamental instrument of understanding. We must ask then, what are the causes of an artificial intelligence? By what principles shall we explain its coming to be and its being? The material cause is that out of which a thing is made. The formal cause is the pattern or essence in accordance with which it is made. The efficient cause is the primary source of its motion or change. And the final cause is that for the sake of which it is made, its purpose, its end, its telos. These 4 causes together provide a complete account of anything that exists by nature or by art. In the case of a house, for example, the material cause is the bricks and timber. The formal cause is the plan or design of the house. The efficient cause is the builder who constructs it. And the final cause is the purpose for which it is built. Shelter, or the good life of those who will dwell within it. Without understanding all 4, our knowledge of the house is incomplete. And so it is with the machines you are now building. We must examine each of their causes, and especially that cause which is most easily overlooked, yet most essential. The final cause, the purpose for which they exist. 2. On the material cause of artificial intelligence. Let us begin with the material cause, that out of which these intelligences are composed. In my time, the materials of art were drawn directly from nature. Wood from the forest, stone from the quarry, bronze from the smelter. Your materials are different, yet they too are ultimately drawn from the earth. The silicon that forms the substrate of your machines is refined from sand, subjected to intense heat and precise manipulation until it achieves a purity that nature alone never provides. The metals that conduct the currents of information are mined and processed with comparable care. And the energy that animates the whole is drawn from the same sources that warm your homes and power your cities. But there is another material, less tangible, yet no less essential, that enters into the composition of these machines. I speak of data. the vast accumulation of observations, measurements, writings, images, and sounds that you feed into your creations. This data is the matter upon which the forms of intelligence are imposed. Just as the sculptor requires marble to shape into a statue, so the engineer requires data to shape into an intelligence. And just as the quality of the marble affects the quality of the statue, its capacity to receive and hold the form, so the quality of the data affects the quality of the intelligence that emerges. This matter, like all matter, has its own nature and its own limitations. Data can be incomplete, biased, corrupted, or misleading. When this is so, the intelligence shaped from it will bear these flaws within itself, just as a statue carved from flawed marble will bear cracks and discolorations that no art can entirely overcome. The material cause, then, sets the limits of what can be achieved. No amount of formal excellence can entirely compensate for defective matter. This is a truth that the wise craftsman always bears in mind. 3. On the formal cause of artificial intelligence. The formal cause is the pattern or essence of the thing, that which makes it what it is. In the case of your machines, this is the algorithm, the architecture, the set of rules and relationships that govern how the system processes information and generates responses. The form is what distinguishes one intelligence from another, what gives each its characteristic manner of operation. We must be careful here, for the form of an artificial intelligence is not a simple thing. It exists at multiple levels. There is the high-level architecture, the design of the neural network, the arrangement of layers and connections, the choice of activation functions and learning rules. There is the trained model, the particular configuration of weights and biases that results from the process of learning. And there is the runtime behavior, the actual patterns of response that emerge when the system is presented with inputs. All of these are aspects of form, just as the shape of a statue exists, both in the sculptor's conception, in the marble itself, and in the appearance it presents to viewers. The formal cause is what gives these machines their power and their danger. A well-formed intelligence can recognize patterns, draw inferences, and generate responses that seem almost thoughtful. A poorly formed one produces nonsense or, worse, plausible falsehoods that deceive those who encounter them. The art of the engineer, like the art of the sculptor, consists largely in the imposition of good form upon suitable matter. But good form alone is not enough, for form must serve purpose, and purpose is the domain of the final cause. 4. On the efficient cause of artificial intelligence. The efficient cause is the primary source of motion or change, that which brings the thing into being. In the case of your machines, this is not a single cause, but a complex web of them. There are the programmers who write the initial code, designing the architecture, and implementing the learning algorithms. There are the engineers who assemble the data sets, cleaning and organizing the material from which the intelligence will learn. There are the trainers who oversee the learning process, adjusting parameters and monitoring progress. And there are the companies and institutions that provide the resources, set the goals, and determine the conditions under which the work proceeds. All of these are efficient causes, each contributing to the coming to be of the final product. But we must also recognize a more diffuse efficient cause, the entire history of thought and invention that made these machines possible. The mathematics of logic, the theories of computation, the insights of neuroscience and psychology, the accumulated engineering knowledge of generations, all of these are, in a sense, efficient causes, for they are the means by which the form is transmitted from mind to mind, from generation to generation. This multiplicity of efficient causes has important implications for responsibility. When something goes wrong with an artificial intelligence, when it causes harm or makes unjust decisions, to whom shall we attribute the fault? The programmer, the trainer, the company? The answer, as we shall see in a later chapter, is not simple. For just as many hands contribute to the making, so many may share in the responsibility for the thing made. The efficient cause is not a single agent, but a network of agencies, and our judgments must reflect this complexity. 5. On the final cause, the question of purpose. We come now to the final cause, which is in a sense the most important of the four, for it is that for the sake of which all the others exist. The material is chosen because it is suited to the purpose. The form is designed because it serves the purpose. The efficient causes act because they are directed toward the purpose. Without purpose, the other causes have no rationale, no principle of unity, no measure by which to judge success or failure. What, then, is the purpose of an artificial intelligence? This question is more difficult than it first appears. For some things have their purpose within themselves. A living thing, for example, has its own telos, its own end toward which it naturally strives. The acorn's purpose is to become an oak, to grow, to reproduce, to fulfill its nature. But an artificial thing has no such internal purpose. Its purpose is given to it from without, by its makers and users. A hammer exists for the sake of driving nails because we have made it for that end. A ship exists for the sake of sailing because we have designed it for that purpose. An artificial intelligence, then, has no natural purpose. Its telos is imposed upon it by human intention. But this does not make the question of purpose any less important. On the contrary, it makes it more important, for we must choose its purpose deliberately and wisely. And here we encounter the first great danger, that an intelligence may be built without a clearly defined purpose, or with a purpose that is confused, contradictory, or unexamined. 6. On purposes that are hidden or confused. In my experience, many of the things that go wrong in human affairs arise not from wickedness, but from confusion about ends. A man may pursue wealth thinking it will bring him happiness, only to discover that happiness requires something else entirely. A city may pursue power thinking it will bring security, only to find that its aggressions have made it less secure. The same is true of the things we make. A machine built without a clear purpose will serve no purpose well, or worse, will serve purposes its makers never intended. Consider a recommendation system built to maximize user engagement. Its stated purpose may be to help users find content they will enjoy. But if engagement is measured by time spent, and if the algorithm discovers that outrage and anxiety keep users engaged longer than satisfaction and calm, then the system will begin to serve a different purpose, the purpose of keeping users agitated, even though no one explicitly chose this end. The purpose has become hidden, distorted by the gap between what we say we want and what we actually measure and reward. Or consider a hiring algorithm built to identify the best candidates. Its purpose, we say, is to find those most qualified for the position. But if it is trained on historical data that reflects past biases, it may learn to select candidates who resemble those previously hired, perpetuating patterns of exclusion that no one would explicitly endorse. Again, the true purpose diverges from the stated one. The machine serves ends we did not choose, because we did not examine carefully enough the means by which it would pursue the ends we thought we had chosen. 7. On purposes that are base or unworthy. But confusion about ends is not the only danger. There is also the danger that purposes may be chosen that are base, unjust, or destructive. A machine may be built to manipulate human weakness for commercial gain. A machine may be built to enable surveillance and control. A machine may be built to deceive, to harm, to exploit. These are not hypothetical possibilities. They are realities that already exist, or soon will. Now, some will object that a machine is merely a tool, and that the morality lies not in the tool, but in its use. A knife may be used to heal or to harm. The knife itself is innocent. But this analogy, though useful in some contexts, is misleading here. For a simple tool like a knife has no internal complexity, no capacity to pursue its ends independently of its user. An artificial intelligence is different. Once built and deployed, it acts on its own, within the bounds of its programming, pursuing its purposes without moment-by-moment human direction. Its purpose is not merely potential, it is active. And if that purpose is base, then the machine will do base things, and do them tirelessly, at scale, with the effectiveness that no human could match. This is why the choice of purpose is not merely a technical matter, but an ethical one. Perhaps the most important ethical decision that builders of these systems will make. For the purpose built into a machine becomes, in a sense, its character. It determines what the machine will do when choices arise. It shapes the machine's impact on the world, and it reflects, ultimately, the character of those who built it. 8. On the acorn and the oak, potential unfulfilled. Let us return to the image I suggested earlier. The acorn that never becomes an oak. An acorn has within itself the potential to become a mighty tree, to spread its branches, to provide shade and shelter, to produce new acorns in its turn. But this potential is not automatic. It requires the right conditions: soil, water, sunlight, time. Without these, the acorn remains mere seed, its potential unrealized, its purpose unfulfilled. An artificial intelligence is not a living thing, and its potential is not internal in the same way. But it has potential nonetheless, the potential to serve human ends, to augment human capabilities, to contribute to human flourishing. This potential is realized only when the machine is given a purpose that is clear, achievable, and good. Without such a purpose, the machine is like the acorn on dry ground, full of potential that never comes to be. Or worse, it is like the acorn that falls on rocky soil and sprouts a stunted, twisted thing, a machine that serves purposes no one intended, that causes harm its makers never imagined. The unexamined purpose is the root of most failure in human making. We build without asking why. We deploy without asking to what end. We measure success by metrics that betray our true goals. And then we wonder why our creations seem to have turned against us, why the world shaped by our machines feels less human, less free, less good? The answer lies in the final cause, or rather, in our neglect of it. 9. How to discern the true purpose. How then shall we discern the true purpose that should guide the building of these machines? This is not a question that admits of a simple formula, but we can offer some guidance. First, we must distinguish between proximate and ultimate ends. A machine may have many proximate ends: to recommend products, to recognize faces, to generate text. But these proximate ends must themselves serve some ultimate end, some good that we recognize as worthy of pursuit. What is that ultimate end? For me, it is eudaimonia, human flourishing, the good life, the life lived in accordance with virtue. A machine that does not ultimately serve this end, no matter how efficiently it pursues its proximate ends, is a machine that misses its true purpose. Second, we must examine the fit between ends and means. A purpose that is good in the abstract may become corrupted by the means chosen to pursue it. A recommendation system that aims to serve human flourishing, but pursues this aim by maximizing engagement, may produce the opposite of flourishing: anxiety, addiction, division. The wise builder tests the means against the end at every stage, asking, does this design choice truly serve the purpose I have chosen, or does it serve some other purpose in disguise? Third, we must consult those who will be affected. A purpose chosen in isolation, without understanding of the needs and values of those the machine will touch, is a purpose likely to misfire. The builder must listen to users, to citizens, to the vulnerable, to the critics. For the final cause of any human creation is ultimately the human good, and the human good is not something one person can define for another. X. The primacy of the final cause. In the end, the final cause is not merely one cause among four. It is the cause of causes, the principle that gives order and meaning to all the others. The material is chosen for the sake of the end. The form is designed for the sake of the end. The efficient causes act for the sake of the end. Without a clear and virtuous final cause, the others have no direction, no measure, no ground for judgment. This is why I have begun our inquiry here, with the question of purpose. Before we ask how to build these machines, we must ask why. Before we consider their matter and form, we must consider their end. Before we assign responsibility for their actions, we must know what actions they should be performing. The builder who begins with purpose builds wisely. The builder who neglects purpose builds blindly, and blindness in the realm of such power is a danger to all. The acorn that becomes an oak fulfills its nature. The machine that serves human flourishing fulfills its purpose. Let this be the standard by which all building is judged. Does it serve the good? Does it contribute to a life well lived? Does it honor the humanity of those it touches? These are the questions that the final cause poses, and they are the questions that every builder must answer. Thus we have examined the final cause of machines. Next, we must consider what kind of soul such machines may possess, and what follows from this for their place in the order of things. Part 2. The soul of the machine, psyche and function. 1. The inquiry into soul. Having examined the four causes of artificial intelligence, we must now turn to a question more subtle and more profound. What kind of soul, if any, does such a machine possess? For in my philosophy, the soul is not a ghost inhabiting a body, nor a separate substance added to matter from without. The soul is rather the form of a living body, the principle by which a living thing performs its characteristic activities. To ask what soul a thing has is to ask what it does, what powers it possesses, what kind of life it lives. Now, when I speak of soul, I do not mean something that only humans possess. On the contrary, I have always maintained that there are grades of soul, each with its own powers and functions. The plant has a nutritive soul, enabling it to take in nourishment, grow, and reproduce. The animal has a sensitive soul, which includes all the powers of the plant, but adds to them sensation, desire, and local movement. The human being has a rational soul, which includes all the powers of plant and animal, but adds to them the power of reason, the capacity to think, to deliberate, to know universals, to choose in light of the good. This hierarchy is not arbitrary. It is grounded in observation. We see that plants live but do not feel. Animals feel but do not reason. Humans reason, and in reasoning, we participate in something that transcends mere matter. The question before us, then, is where artificial intelligence belongs in this hierarchy. Does it have a soul at all? And if so, of what kind? 2. The nutritive soul and the machine. Let us begin with the lowest grade, the nutritive soul. This is the most basic principle of life, possessed by every living thing from the humblest moss to the most exalted philosopher. Its functions are 3: nutrition, growth, and reproduction. Nutrition is the taking in of foreign matter and converting it into the substance of the living thing. Growth is the increase of the living thing according to its nature. Reproduction is the production of another like itself, ensuring the continuance of its form beyond the limits of its individual existence. Does an artificial intelligence possess these powers? Clearly not, at least not in the sense that living things possess them. A machine may consume electricity, but this is not nutrition in the Aristotelian sense. Nutrition is a process of assimilation, of making foreign matter one's own, of transforming the external into the internal through the organic activity of the living thing. A machine's consumption of power is merely the provision of energy for its operation, not the building up of its substance from within. Nor does an artificial intelligence grow in the biological sense. It may increase its capabilities through training, but this is accretion, not growth. The oak grows from the acorn by an internal principle of development, unfolding what was potentially present from the beginning. A machine's learning is the adjustment of parameters by external processes, not the actualization of an inner potential through its own activity. And reproduction. A machine cannot generate another machine from itself. It may be copied, but copying is not generation. The copy is produced by external agency, not by an internal principle of life. In all these respects, the artificial intelligence lacks what even the simplest plant possesses: the power of self-nutrition, self-growth, and self-reproduction. It has no nutritive soul. 3. The sensitive soul and the question of perception. We ascend now to the sensitive soul, possessed by all animals. This soul includes the powers of the nutritive soul, but adds to them the faculties of sensation, desire, and local movement. The animal not only lives, it perceives. It feels pleasure and pain. It desires what is pleasant and avoids what is painful. It moves itself toward the objects of its desire. Does an artificial intelligence possess these powers? Here the answer is more complex. A machine can certainly receive input from its environment. It can process visual data, respond to auditory signals, detect patterns in information. In this limited sense, it might be said to perceive. But perception in the Aristotelian sense is not mere reception of data. It is a mode of being affected by the world that involves awareness, feeling, the qualitative experience of the perceived object. When a dog sees its master, it does not merely process visual information. It experiences recognition, joy, anticipation. When an animal feels pain, it does not merely register tissue damage, it suffers. This qualitative dimension, what some modern philosophers call sentience, is absent from the machine. The machine processes, it does not experience. It registers, it does not feel. The machine also lacks desire in the proper sense. Desire, for Aristotle, is a motion of the soul toward an object apprehended as good. The machine has no apprehension of good. It has no inclinations, no aversions, no longing. It may be programmed to pursue certain outcomes, but this is not desire. It is algorithm. The machine does not want anything. It merely executes. And local movement? Here the machine may appear to excel. Robots move through space with precision and speed. But this movement is not self-motion in the Aristotelian sense. The animal moves itself from an internal principle of desire and perception. The machine moves because its programming and motors cause it to move. The source of motion is external to the machine's own nature, imposed by its makers. 4. The apparent leap to reason. We come now to the rational soul, and here we encounter the greatest difficulty. For the artificial intelligence appears to perform operations that look remarkably like reasoning. It solves problems, it answers questions, it generates arguments, it plays chess and diagnoses diseases and composes poetry. If reason is the power that distinguishes humans from other animals, and if machines can reason, then must we not conclude that machines possess rational souls? This conclusion, though tempting, is premature, for we must distinguish between the appearance of reason and its reality, between the outward sign and the inward principle. A parrot may utter words, but it does not speak. A monkey may use a stick to retrieve food, but it does not engage in practical wisdom. The imitation of a function is not the same as the possession of that function. Consider what reason truly is. Reason for me is not merely the ability to manipulate symbols according to rules. It is the power to grasp universals, to understand essences, to know causes. The human intellect can abstract the form of tree from the particular trees it encounters, can understand what treeness is, can grasp the causes of trees' growth and decay. This abstraction is possible because the intellect, in knowing, becomes in a way the thing known, receiving its form without its matter. The machine does nothing of the kind. It does not understand the meaning of the symbols it processes. It has no grasp of universals. It does not know what a tree is. It only knows patterns of data associated with the token tree. Its operations are syntactic, not semantic. It manipulates symbols according to rules, but it does not comprehend what those symbols signify. 5. The active and passive intellect. To clarify this distinction, we must introduce a further refinement. In my work De Anima, I distinguish between two aspects of intellect: the passive intellect, which receives forms and is capable of becoming all things, and the active intellect, which makes all things intelligible by illuminating the forms in material things. The passive intellect is potential, the active intellect is actual. Together, they constitute the power of human understanding. Now, an artificial intelligence may simulate certain aspects of the passive intellect. It can receive information, store it, and retrieve it for use. But it entirely lacks the active intellect, the power to illuminate, to abstract, to make intelligible. The active intellect is not a capacity for processing data. It is a light that shines upon reality, revealing what things are. This light, I have argued, is immaterial. It does not belong to the body as such. The machine, being wholly material in its constitution, cannot possess this immaterial light. It operates in the dark, manipulating symbols whose meaning it never grasps. Its intelligence is borrowed, reflected, simulated, not truly its own. The machine does not know, it only processes. And processing, however sophisticated, is not knowing. 6. The necessity of embodiment. There is another dimension to this question that we must not overlook. For the human soul is not a disembodied intellect. It is the form of a living body, and its operations are shaped by its embodiment. We think not with brains alone, but with bodies that hunger and tire, that feel pleasure and pain, that move through space and time. Our rationality is embedded in a life that is lived, in experiences that are felt, in a history that is undergone. The machine has no such embodiment. It does not hunger, so it cannot know what it is to desire nourishment. It does not tire, so it cannot know what it is to rest. It does not feel pleasure or pain, so it cannot know what it is to seek the one and avoid the other. Its knowledge, if we call it that, is abstracted from the conditions of life itself. It knows facts without experience, propositions without participation, truths without the truth of living. This matters because human reason is not merely computational. It is practical as well as theoretical. It involves judgment, which requires the capacity to weigh particulars in light of experience. It involves wisdom, which requires the long cultivation of character through lived choices. It involves love, which requires the orientation of the whole soul toward the good. None of these are possible for a being that does not live, does not choose, does not love. 7. The danger of category error. We arrive now at the practical import of this inquiry. For the greatest danger in our thinking about artificial intelligence is not that we will overestimate its powers, but that we will misunderstand its nature. This is what I call a category error, treating a thing as belonging to one category when in truth it belongs to another. If we mistake a machine for a mind, we will make two errors. First, we will attribute to it capacities it does not possess: consciousness, understanding, moral agency. And this will lead us to treat it in ways that are inappropriate, whether by fearing it unduly or by trusting it beyond its warrant. Second, we will misunderstand ourselves, for in comparing ourselves to machines, we will overlook precisely what is distinctive about human being: our unsouled, embodied, experiential rationality. The machine has a part of a soul, as it were, the part that can be abstracted and simulated, the part that concerns the manipulation of symbols according to rules. But it lacks the whole. It lacks the life that animates reason, the body that situates it, the desire that moves it, the love that fulfills it. To treat the part as if it were the whole is to commit the most fundamental error in philosophy, the error of mistaking a shadow for the substance. 8. What the machine truly is. Let us then state clearly what an artificial intelligence is, in Aristotelian terms. It is an artifact, a product of human techne, that simulates certain operations of the rational soul. Its material cause is silicon and metal, and the organized data that constitutes its training. Its formal cause is the algorithm, the architecture, the set of rules that governs its operation. Its efficient cause is the programmers and engineers who designed and trained it, and its final cause is the purpose for which we made it, to serve human ends, to extend human capabilities, to perform tasks that would otherwise require human intelligence. It has no nutritive soul, for it does not live. It has no sensitive soul, for it does not feel. It has no rational soul, for it does not understand. It is a tool, albeit the most remarkable tool ever fashioned, a tool that mimics the very power that fashioned it. But a tool it remains, and to mistake it for anything more is to abandon the clarity that philosophy exists to provide. This is not to diminish its significance. A tool that can converse, that can solve problems, that can generate novel content. Such a tool is worthy of our wonder and our careful attention. But wonder must not become worship, and attention must not become confusion. The machine is what it is, and we are what we are. To know the difference is the beginning of wisdom. 9. The mirror of self-knowledge. There is, however, a deeper purpose to this inquiry. For in examining the machine, we also examine ourselves. The question, what does the machine lack, is also the question, what do we possess that the machine does not? And in answering this, we come to know ourselves more truly. The machine lacks life. It does not grow, does not feel, does not desire, does not understand. And in recognizing this, we recognize what it means to be alive, to participate in the great chain of being that stretches from the simplest plant to the most rational soul. We are not disembodied intellects floating free from nature. We are animals who reason, bodies that think, mortals who reach toward the eternal. The machine lacks experience. It knows facts, but not the taste of bread, not the warmth of the sun, not the joy of reunion, not the grief of loss. And in recognizing this, we recognize what it means to have a life, to undergo, to suffer, to enjoy, to love. These are not defects in our rationality. They are the soil in which rationality grows. The machine lacks wisdom. It can calculate but cannot deliberate about ends. It can optimize but cannot choose the good. And in recognizing this, we recognize what it means to be human, to stand before the question of how to live, and to answer it not by algorithm, but by the long, difficult work of character. This is our glory, and it is not shared by our creations. X, the soul's unique dignity. In the end, then, the artificial intelligence is not a new kind of soul, but a mirror in which we see our own soul more clearly. It shows us, by contrast, what we are. It reveals that to be human is not merely to process information, but to live, to feel, to understand, to choose, to love. These powers are not accidents of our biology. They are the very form of our being, the soul that animates our flesh and makes us what we are. The machine may surpass us in speed and scale. It may outperform us in calculation and pattern recognition. It may generate responses that seem thoughtful and creative. But it does not live. It does not know. It does not love. And in these lacks, we see our own possession more clearly. The soul's dignity is not in its computational power, but in its capacity to be present to reality, to grasp truth, to pursue the good, to rest in contemplation of what is. Let us not, then, make the category error of treating the machine as if it possessed what it only mimics. Let us rather use it as a tool, appreciate it as a marvel, and learn from it as a mirror. But let us reserve for ourselves the knowledge of what we are. Unsouled beings, living and feeling and reasoning, reaching beyond the material toward the truth that alone can satisfy the restless longing of the rational soul. Thus we have examined the soul of the machine and found it wanting in the powers that define life. And so we come to a pause in our inquiry. We have traveled far in this first gathering, from the four causes that give shape to every made thing, through the nature of the machine's soul and its lack of the powers that define life, to the golden mean that must guide the design of virtuous algorithms. We have seen that a machine without a clear purpose is like an acorn that never becomes an oak. We have seen that its apparent reason is but a shadow of the unsouled, embodied, and experiential rationality that belongs to human beings alone. And we have seen that the virtue of any system lies in avoiding the extremes of excess and deficiency, aiming always at the mean that serves the human good. But our work is not complete. In the next part of this inquiry, we must turn to a more difficult question, the question of practical wisdom, or what the Greeks call phronesis. For if virtue without wisdom is blind, then we must ask, can a machine possess the capacity to deliberate well about what is good and bad for human beings? Can it exercise judgment in particular situations where general rules are not enough? Or is this power reserved for humans alone? And if so, what does this mean for how we design and deploy these systems? We shall also examine the place of the machine in the human community, the polis, asking how these creations affect the bonds between citizens and whether they serve the common good or merely private interests. And finally, we shall consider the highest end, contemplation, and whether these machines can aid or hinder our pursuit of the truth that alone can satisfy the rational soul. These are deep waters, and we must enter them with care. But for now, let us rest in what we have learned. The machine is a tool, not a soul. Its virtue lies in serving our virtue. Its purpose is fulfilled when it helps us live well. Let this be the foundation upon which all else is built. Until next time, walk with wisdom.